lecture, we discussed about Human Genome Project. Actually, Human Genome Project is a bigger thing. So I thought of making two videos for that. In the previous lecture, we discussed about what are the initiatives, which countries participated, and what is the length, why is it considered as a mega project we discussed, and then what are the goals we discussed, and then what are the non-human genome models also they have sequenced, like bacteria they have sequenced, yeast they have sequenced, a nematode called Caenorhabditis elegans they have sequenced, then they have sequenced the fruit fly genome, then they have sequenced the rice genome and the Arabidopsis thaliana. 6 non-human models they have sequenced before doing the sequencing of the human. So the scientists were very clever. They were doing complex, from simple to complex they are doing sequencing. So which helped them to have an understanding, have an idea about the genome sequencing. Then they can do the sequencing of the complex organism called human, right? All that we discussed in the previous lecture. What did we discuss once again in the previous lecture? Like what is the Human Genome Project and what are the initiatives, like what are the countries they came out and they participated, like Japan, Germany we told, France we told, China we told. These are the people joined with US and UK. They started in 1990 and they announced that we completed in the year 2003 with 99.999 accuracy. We have done the sequencing of 99% of the genome. So all that we have discussed in the previous lecture. Goals also we discussed in the previous lecture. Now the remaining topics which are left out under Human Genome Project, we will try to cover in this lecture. Now what are the remaining things which are left out means we need to talk about the methodologies, what methods they have opted to do the sequencing. That we will start now. After discussing the methods, we need to talk about what are the salient features after doing the sequencing, what are the features they told that the human genome has. That side heading is called salient features of the human genome. Then after finding out the salient features, so what are the advantages of Human Genome Project also we need to discuss. That means in today's session we will talk about the methods, we will talk about the salient features and we will talk about the applications, right? So now let's talk about methodologies first. Let us talk about methodologies, right? So when we talk about the methods of human genome sequencing, now I have announced a test for you. I have announced a test for you on this chapter and I gave only 2 days time for you. Then students can do this preparation also, this way preparation also, this way preparation also. Sometimes some students what they will do. So the first they will check, some set of students first they will check which and all are important, and they will read those concepts first to ensure that yeah, minimum marks I will get because these are important, from this anyway question will come. That is one approach. That's one approach. Another approach is a blind approach where they'll start from the first page and first paragraph of the chapter, topic by topic, they'll finish and they'll come and they'll reach the last topic, right? So like this, even in methods of DNA sequencing also, there are 2 methods there, okay? So that's what, let us see what are the 2 methods of DNA sequencing. One method is called EST and the other method is called SA. So what is EST method, what is SA method? Let's try to understand in detail. EST stands for expressed sequenced tags. Again, EST stands for expressed sequenced tags. So EST stands for a method called expressed sequence tags, and the second method is called sequence annotation. This method is called sequence annotation. So these are the 2 methods where we can use to do the sequencing of the human genome, right? Now what do you mean by express sequence tag, what do you mean by sequence annotation? Let us see again. Suppose for example, if we go to a shop, now we want to buy a dress, then which way you go? So first, whether you wanted a branded one or a normal one, that you need to decide. Then in which range you want, that you need to decide. Then you'll go to that particular corner where that brand is there, and there you'll be looking at the price tags, right? You'll be looking at the price tags. If you are going to buy it at 3,000 or 5,000, between 3 to 5, then you'll be looking at the price tags where 3 to 5 is there, and in that you'll be searching, right? So like that, what do you mean by expressed sequence tag means? What do you mean by expressed sequence tag means? We know the information is on the DNA gene, but DNA cannot come out of the nucleus. So then DNA expresses, or DNA it gives the information to RNA. Now this RNA will express in the form of protein, the language of protein every cell can understand. Then the cell will do its function with the help of the protein. Now what do you mean by expressed sequence tags? Expressed sequence tag means taking the RNA, not the DNA. Why? Because RNA is expressing in the form of a protein. Now genome sequencing means DNA sequencing we have to do, but then I am telling we are taking RNA. Then why are we taking RNA? What is the advantage of taking RNA? We know that functional RNA, matured RNA will have only coding regions which will code for a protein, whereas DNA, if you see, 98% of DNA is junk DNA which doesn't code for anything. Only 2%, less than 2% is the coding one which codes for 50,000 of proteins, we will tell. So unnecessarily, why to do the complete sequencing? That's what I told. One set of students will read only the important questions. Like that, EST is a method where we will identify the genes which are to be expressed. We'll identify the genes which are expressed as RNAs, and then that RNA will try to sequence first. That's the first method. Hope you understood what is meant by expressed sequence tags. In expressed sequence tag, we'll identify all the genes that are expressed as RNAs. Write down. So we will identify all the genes that are expressed as RNAs. We'll identify all the genes that are expressed as RNAs, and we'll do the sequencing of this RNA, or we know the method also, right? From RNA to DNA is reverse transcription. You can make that DNA. Unnecessarily, if you do the whole DNA, in that only little parts are exons, majority of it are introns. They don't express. So unnecessarily you need to do the sequencing of all these introns. Whereas if you take the RNA, in RNA all the introns will be removed and only exons will be there, right? So we trimmed it off. Only the useful information is there. So this is one scientist approach. They thought of doing only those regions which are coding for proteins. So what is that method called? It is called expressed sequence tags. So only those genes that are expressed as RNAs are coded first. So hope you understood this method now clearly. Now let's go to sequence annotation. I told the other set of students, they are not they're not happy if they read only important questions. They want to understand the concept more clear. So then from the starting page, starting para till the ending page, ending para, they will read. It's a blind approach. In blind approach, what we will do, blind approach is doing the sequencing of the whole set of genome. So in sequence annotation, what will we do? So we will do the sequencing of whole set of genome. It is a blind approach. It is a blind approach of sequencing. It's a blind approach of sequencing the whole genome. First, we will do the whole genome sequencing, which is having both coding and non-coding sequences. Later, we will assign their functions. This is coding, this is non-coding, this codes for this function. But initially what we have done, so we did not check that. Blindly we followed A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H like X, Y, Z, like that we have done. So we will code the whole genome that contains both coding and non-coding regions. Both coding and non-coding regions. Now you know what are coding regions called? Coding regions are called exons. Non-coding regions are called introns. So here you are doing the sequencing only of the coding regions. But here you are doing the sequence of both coding as well as non-coding regions. And later we will assign the functions. And later assigning the functions. Later we will see, okay, this is coding, this is its function. This is non-coding, it doesn't code for anything. That method is called blind approach. It takes time obviously. So this can be done faster because we are doing the sequencing of only those genes which are coding for a protein. Hope you understood the two methods what the scientists have opted for doing the human genome sequencing. The first method I am telling, EST, expressed sequence tags, where we will take only those RNAs which are expressed in terms of proteins. The second method is sequence annotation. Complete sequence we do and then we annotate it that this is coding, this is non-coding, coding has this function, like that we do. Children, you understood till here? Now, the next step is what are the steps of Human Genome Project? So, the next one is steps of Human Genome Project. First of all, what we need? In our first step, we need to isolate the DNA from a cell. See, this is a picture which is there in NCERT. So, what we have to do? From a person, we have to take out the cell. And from the cell, we have to isolate the DNA out. We have to take the chromosomes out. That is our first step. What is the first step? Isolation of DNA from a cell, from an organism. So, it is, can I write it in simple manner? DNA isolation. That is what this showed us in this picture. From a person, we are taking the cell. From the cell, we are taking the DNA or the chromosome. That is our first step, right? Now, what is the next step? In the next step, if you see here, so we have opened the DNA and we are digesting the DNA. We are cutting the DNA. So, if you ask me to tell A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, it's a lengthy task, right? If you ask me to take break, I can clearly tell A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, like that I can tell you. So, like that, we cannot do the sequencing at a stretch from this end to this end, which is having 3 billion base pairs, isn't it? So, that is why we need to digest it, convert them into small random fragments. That is our second step, right? So, the second step is digestion or digesting the DNA. Digesting the DNA to get small fragments. To get small fragments, small random fragments we can tell. To get small random fragments with overlapping ends. With overlapping ends. So, what are overlapping ends? Later you will understand. When we annotate it, then you will understand. Just now here you remember, first from the person we need to isolate the cell. From the cell we need to take the DNA out. Then afterwards I try to digest it there, I try to open it and I am trying to break it into pieces. That's what digesting the DNA and getting small random fragments which are having overlapping ends. That is your second step. Then now after doing that, we need to store the fragments also, right? Cloning the fragments in suitable hosts. Now this person's genome should be stored in the form of gene banks. If we have money, we store it in the bank. In the same manner, where are you storing this information? In the gene bank. So, in bank you have lockers, there they will carefully store the money, jewelry, documents and all those things. In the same manner, where do you store the genes then? In lockers? No, in genes, gene banks. So, what are gene banks? Gene banks are the places where cells will be there. Inside the cells, vectors are there. In those vectors, your genes are there. So, the next step is cloning the fragments using suitable host. Okay, our next step is cloning the fragments. Cloning the fragments using suitable hosts and special vectors. Now you got some random fragments. They are overlapping fragments. Overlapping fragment means one fragment is ABC, another fragment will be CDE, another fragment will be DEF, another fragment will be EFG. Like this you have taken the fragments. This is what is overlapping. Overlapping means, so the C will be in this segment also, C will be in this segment also, D will be in this segment also, next segment also, like that we take. So these are overlapping fragments, or in this manner also we can take. What is the other manner? Means EFG, then GHI, like that we can, that is also overlapping fragment. So these overlapping fragments to be stored, no. Where are you storing? In a gene library. Where are we storing? We are storing in a gene library. What is gene library? What is gene library made of? What is this gene library, genomic library made of? In the genomic library, you are having certain cells, hosts they are. So what are they called? Bacteria is a common host, which is a unicellular prokaryote, or yeast is a common host, which is a unicellular eukaryote. Now, into bacteria, if you directly send the DNA, will it take? No, not at all. If you send the this ABC fragment into yeast, will it take? No, not at all. So, you need to send the DNA with the help of a vector. Now, those vectors, what these scientists have prepared, if yeast is the host, then the vector is called yeast artificial chromosome. If bacteria is a host, then the vector is called as bacterial artificial chromosomes, BAC and YAC. BAC and YAC are the special vectors which we use. Now, if you have done biotechnology, you might be asking, so madam, we have chromosomes here and we have plasmids here. Why? What is the necessity of specially preparing artificial vectors? When the bacteria has plasmid, plasmid is also vector. We can insert the ABC fragment or CED fragment directly into the plasmid itself. Why? We need to prepare a BAC, bacterial artificial chromosome, yeast artificial chromosome. Why we need to prepare means the normal size of a wild plasmid is 4 kilobase pairs. In that 4 kilobase pairs, how much can you insert? 1 kilobase pair or 1.5 kilobase pair. Small DNA only you can insert. Now, if you have prepared a plasmid artificially, then there is no size constraint. You have constructed it. You can construct it as long as possible. That means when a wild plasmid, when 10 or 20 plasmids are required to take small fragments, your BAC, bacterial artificial chromosome, one chromosome vector can take such a big DNA because you have constructed your BAC, a big BAC. Your AC, what you have constructed is a big one, so which can carry lengthy DNAs, right? Which can carry lengthy DNAs. Instead of maintaining 10 small notebooks, you can make a one long notebook. Carrying that one long notebook, you will not forget. 10 small notebooks means one book will be here, one book will be here, you will forget it. So, for genomic library also, so the fragments, if they have to be maintained, cloned means, in one yeast if you clone, the person can maintain it. So, that is why they have used a special vectors, children. The names of the special vectors are bacterial artificial chromosome, yeast artificial chromosomes. What are the advantages of this BAC and YAC over wild vectors means they carry long DNAs. Instead of 20 DNAs, one BAC can carry it. That is an advantage. So, these genes are kept inside and are given to yeast. These genes are kept inside bacteria and they are given. Now, if such type of bacteria are cultured in colonies, we know bacterial petri dishes will be there. In petri dish, in nutrient agar medium, we can culture the bacteria. So, yeast also we can culture in the petri dishes. So, we will be culturing them, we will be maintaining them. Suppose later on, after 10-20 years, if a person wants, like 2003 they have done the sequencing, I need the first chromosome, the fragment what they have done. If any scientist community comes and asks, you need to retrieve and give them back, right? So, then you can't tell like, oh, that scientist has done, you have to go and ask him where he kept, I don't know. No, not like that. So, we need, that's what is called data analysis and retrieving the data. So, the information is perfectly stored in gene libraries where we have taken the help of BAC and YAC and we have taken the help of bacteria and yeast as the host. These two are the host, these two are the vectors. So, see once what we have done in this board. In this board, we were talking about the methodologies. I told there are two methods. One is called EST, expressed sequence tags, and the method is called sequence annotation. This is a blind approach from the first alphabet to the last alphabet and then assigning their functions. Whereas this one is a smarter one. So, you'll do the sequencing only of those DNAs which are expressed as RNAs, right? And then we are talking about the steps. 3 steps I have done. The first step is isolating the DNA from a cell. Then next one is digesting the DNA, because at such a long DNA you cannot do. You need to digest it. Now, when you are digesting it, yeah, you can do random digestion, but just see that overlapping ends are there which will help you to join them. Okay, so if C is there here and C is there here, you'll know, okay, this is the first fragment and this will be the second fragment. If E is here and E is here, then you'll come to know, okay, this is the second fragment and this is the third fragment. So aligning becomes easy if you are having overlapping fragments. That is your second step. Now third step, I am telling, clone these fragments in the special vectors. The vectors are back and YAC, and give it to the specific host and maintain them. That step is called genomic library. Quickly take a screenshot. Yes. Now, the next steps we will see now. Methods got over. We are into the steps now. Now, after maintaining it in the form of genomic libraries, our next step is doing the sequencing of these fragments. Now, here I just showed you A, B, C, D, E, F. Are you thinking like 3 billion bases if you want to do such small fragments? How much time it will take? So it's not like that. The DNA fragments, what we need to sequence, we cannot do it. Humanly, it's not possible. I told you, a new era of biology called bioinformatics has been emerged. The computer, what is that? Fast speed computers will do the sequencing. So here we are. So that DNA fragment is sequenced by the computer. So here we will take the help of automated DNA sequencers. We'll take the help of machines which will do the sequencing. And again, who developed this machine then? Who developed this technique then? There's a scientist. His name is Frederick Sanger. His name is Frederick Sanger. He developed a method to do the sequencing of amino acids which are present in a protein. Sanger actually, he did not develop it for DNA sequencing or Human Genome Project. Sanger has designed a computer. He has designed an automated DNA sequencing machine which can do the sequencing of amino acids in a protein. A protein is made up of 20 different amino acids. Now, if a machine can tell what's the first amino acid, second amino acid, third amino acid, fourth amino acid in a protein molecule, if it can find out 20 amino acids, why can't the same machine find out just 4 bases, ATGC, ATGC? Why can't it find out? So, the same technique we also used. So, what is the next step? We are telling that the fragments are sequenced using automated DNA sequencers. So, the first step is DNA isolation. After DNA isolation, I told the second step is digestion. So, after digestion, you will get the random fragments I told. Now, in the next step, we told maintain gene library for further reference. This is our next step. After that, I am telling we need to do the sequencing. These DNA fragments are sequenced using automated DNA sequencers. So, the next step is these fragments are sequenced. The fragments are sequenced using automated DNA sequencers, machines, using automated DNA sequencers. Using the machines, we will do the sequencing. Now, this automated DNA sequencing works on the principle of Frederick Sanger's principle, right? Sequencers which work. It is working. This is a machine which works on the principle of, what is the name of the scientist? His name is Frederick Sanger. How great he is, right? He has developed a machine which can do the sequencing of protein, which can do the sequencing of nucleotides in DNA and RNA. He developed a method which works on the basis of Frederick Sanger. But did he develop it for DNA sequencing or for amino acid sequencing? Frederick Sanger, he developed it for amino acid sequencing, right? In a protein. Amino acid sequencing in a protein. He developed that technique for doing the amino acid sequencing. We used it for nucleotide sequencing also, right? So, like that, what you have done, you have given the task to the computer. And you can see here, on the computer, you know, I drawed it with a black color, but then the computer uses fluorescent dyes. For T, it will take one color. For A, it will take one color. For G, another color. For C, another color. And not only color identification, it will also give separate peaks. For T, higher peak. For A, lower peak. For G, further higher peak. for C, lower peak, like that. It will show you the difference in terms of peak also. It will show you the differences in terms of fluorescent dyes also. Not only that, it will decode and it will write the code also. If you take the print, you can get the print also. So how good is the instrument who is doing the sequencing? We will sequence it. Now, arranging them is, how will you arrange them? You have done the sequencing, right? You have done the sequencing. Next step is arranging them. Arranging the fragments. Now come on, tell me, how will you arrange the fragments? I told this will help us. Overlapping will help us to arrange the fragments in order. Arranging the fragments based on the overlapping ends. Arranging the fragments based on the overlapping ends. We will look at the overlapping ends and then you will tell, okay, it starts with A. So then the first fragment is A, B, C, and next fragment C came. That means the second fragment is here, which goes with C, D, E. Okay, the third fragment is E, which is with this one. That means the third fragment is E, F, G. The next one is with G again, G, H, I. Together is one G, together is one E, together is one C. Then you will get an order of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. So you will arrange them based on the overlapping ends, right? Like this we will arrange them. Again, aligning is also not humanly possible. If it is A, B, C, D, E, F, small DNA, you can do it. But is it so, or it is thousands of base pair fragments? It is thousands and we can't do it. So alignment is also not humanly possible. That is also done by the computer only. So alignment of fragments. Alignment of fragments is not humanly possible. Alignment of fragments is not humanly possible. We can't do it, then who will handle it? So it's done with the help of machines. We are taking the help of machines. Right? We are taking the help of the machines to do the sequencing. So DNA we are isolating. After isolating, we are cutting them. After cutting them, for further reference, we are maintaining them in the genome library. Then these fragments we are giving to the computer, which was developed by Frederick Sanger, which will do the sequencing. After doing the sequencing, we need to arrange them in an order. This overlapping fragments will help us to do the sequencing. But again, because of their lengthy inserts, we can't do it. Computer only will do it, right? Now, specialized computers are there which will do this. Then, these sequences are subsequently annotated after the computer does. So, these sequences are subsequently annotated and assigned to the specific chromosomes. You will decode the sequence and you will tell this is the first chromosome sequence, are subsequently annotated and assigned to particular chromosomes. This is first chromosome sequencing, this is second chromosome sequencing, like that we will tell. So first we will do the sequencing, then based on the overlapping fragments we will join. We can't join, specialized computers only will do. Then after that we will annotate it and we will give it to the particular chromosomes, right? So then these fragments, this is how we do the sequencing. Understood, children? Clearly understood the steps, how easy it is when we are doing step by step like that. Now, okay, they have done the sequencing and they came out with a cheer and they told, yeah, we did it. Highest level organization, man sequence has been completed in 2003. So they want challenge again. So then another challenging task is, what is another challenging task? So for example, your house is located here. So if someone has to locate, you should tell the landmark, right? In the same manner, you have done the genomic sequencing. Now, if I want a particular chromosome, then you need to tell that its physical location you should tell. And you have to tell its genomic location. What is that called? It's called genomic mapping and physical mapping. Particularly pointing out insulin gene is on chromosome number 11 on the bigger arm. So what is that called? Physical location, physical mapping you are doing. And genomic on the bigger arm, on the upper chromatid, that is genomic mapping. Between B and C it is like that we tell. That's the next challenging task. After completing the human genome sequencing in 2003, another challenging task is assigning the genomic maps and physical maps. Okay, let us write on. After completing the human genome sequencing, the next task is, what is the next challenging task for the scientists? Is to establish the genomic map and physical map. They have to establish genomic map, physical map also. Now, what do you mean by physical map? Physically where it is located. Genomic map on the bigger chromatida, smaller chromatida, in between which gene to which gene is the insulin gene located. So that is the next task. Now, how can you generate the physical maps and genomic maps? Means this is generated using DNA polymorphisms. So maps are generated using polymorphisms. Now, what is polymorphisms? A DNA having different sequences is called polymorphisms. So we will generate maps using polymorphisms by using restriction enzymes. So by using restriction enzymes. When you use restriction enzymes, all this polymorphism will come in the next topic also. Restriction enzyme digestion will come in the biotechnology chapter. There you can understand it better. So polymorphisms, there we will find out the recognition sequences, and then there in the recognition sequences we find that there are some repetitive sequences. We also know that these repetitive sequences can be called as microsatellites. They are called satellite DNAs. You can call them as microsatellites or mini satellites. So this topic I will tell you in the next one also. What is the next topic? DNA fingerprinting. There you can understand in detail. Okay. So we will carry on this topic to the next one. So the next challenging task for the scientist is to establish the genomic map and physical map. You understood. What is genomic map? Locating. Physical map, physical location. Genomic map, gene location. Now how did they do it? By using polymorphisms, by using restriction enzymes, by finding out the repetitive sequences. These repetitive sequences are satellite DNAs. Why they are satellite? We will talk there in the next topic. Some are micro and some are mini satellites, that we will use it. Hope you understood this board. Okay. So first isolating the DNA from a cell, that's the first step. Then digesting is the second step. Maintaining the library is the third step for further reference. Then giving it to the DNA sequencers, which works on the principle of Frederick Sanger, who developed it for amino acid sequencing. Computer will do it, and then we need to align it, we need to arrange it. Arranging is done based on the overlapping regions, but again, since it is a small fragments I took, so we can do it, but our genes are very big, you can't go it. It is again not humanly possible. Machines again will do it. Then I told you, right? So for each base it takes a color and it takes a different peak, and it will decode also, and it will give you can take the print also, like the ECG you will get. Now then after that we will subsequently annotate it, and we will tell this is the first chromosome sequence, this is the second chromosome sequence, and these are the functions. After that the task is to locate it, map it, genomic mapping and physical mapping. We will take the help of polymorphisms, we will take the help of satellite DNAs to find out. So this is what is about methodologies. The next topic is salient features. Quickly take a picture, screenshot, then we will get into the salient features also. Right. Now we will talk about the salient features. Now after doing this much, so what are the points they came out and they told, like this is the thing we identified after doing the sequencing. Now this picture is not required, so we understood this picture which is there in NCERT. Step by step we understood. I think you are able to understand such high-end topic also in an easy manner, isn't it? Now the next topic is, what are the salient features of the human genome? What are the salient features of human genome? What are the points they noted and they told us after doing the sequencing? Point by point we will see. First, they told that human genome contains 3164.7 million nitrogen bases, they told. In the first point, they told billion, now they are telling million, but both means the same. What is the first salient feature? They told human genome consists of, the first point they told is human, they told the length, that's it. They told human genome, they told it consists of, it is 3164.7 million, it is million nucleotides, or we can go it in terms of billion also. If it is billion, then it will be 3 billion. It is 3 billion base pairs. This is given in the first page, and here in salient features they mentioned in terms of nucleotides. They found it, they have done the sequencing of that. That is their first salient feature. Second salient feature, they told the average size of a gene is 3000 bases. Now average size of a chapter, 20 pages, like that. What is the average size of a gene? The average size of a gene, it contains 3000 bases, it seems. That's what they found out. Now the second feature they told is the average size of a gene is how much they saw? 3000 bases. But you know, biggest gene also will be there, the smallest gene also there. They have identified the biggest gene which codes for dystrophin protein, so which is made up of 2.4 million bases. Where are thousands, where are millions? But a largest gene, there is a largest gene which codes for a protein. What is that? Which codes for dystrophin protein, I told. Which codes for dystrophin is having 2.4 million bases. Now, deficiency of this dystrophin only will cause a genetic disorder called muscular dystrophy, right? So, the normal size is how much? 3000 bases. But there is a biggest gene, what is that? Dystrophin gene, which is having 2.4 million bases. That's what they told. Now, what is the third salient feature they told? They told that the total number of estimated genes, they thought they were 80,000 to 1,40,000 genes they estimated. But then when they did the sequencing, they came to know that there are only 30,000 genes are there, right? So, only 30,000 genes are seen. But their initial estimate, how much they estimated first? The initial estimate was, they thought, children, it is 80,000 to 1,40,000 genes will be there, they thought. 1,40,000 genes will be there, they thought, looking at our complexity. But when they counted, there are only 30,000 genes. They are very less, right? 25,000 to 30,000, those many genes are only there. That's the next thing. But then again, out of these 30,000 genes also, functions of only 50% of genes are known. The functions of the remaining 50% of genes are still not known, right? They're still working on it. That's the fourth salient feature they told. So, functions of 50% genes were established. Only functions of 50,000 genes were established, and the remaining 50% were still to be established, were still not known. Just see, 30,000 genes are there. In the 30,000 genes, 50% genes functions are known, means 15,000 genes functions are known. So that means 15,000 proteins, what they will do in our body, scientists know. The other 15,000 genes, what they are doing, still they are working on that. That is their fourth salient feature. Then the next salient feature, what they told is, less than 2% of the genome only is a coding region, they told. Less than 2% of the genome codes for the proteins. What is the next one they told? Less than 2% of the genes they code 2% of the genome, we will write. 2% of the genome only codes for proteins. A student has written 10 pages of answer sheet. In that only like 1 page or 2 page are valid information, rest all is waste. So like that, a person is having this much 100% of DNA, in that the useful information is less than 2% that they came to know. Okay, that means what happened to the remaining ones? That they are telling they are repeated sequences. They're telling repeated sequences make a large proportion of the human genome, because only 2% is unique one which is coding for protein. Their next point, immediate point, is they're telling repeated sequences make large portion. Repeated sequences make large portion of the human genome. When they are telling that when 2% is only coding, then everyone knows that large percent is repeated sequences only, isn't it? Now these repeated sequences, how they will repeat? No, 100 to 1000 times they will repeat. For example, if I am telling like human genome, human genome, human genome, human genome, human genome, human genome, like that I am repeating. Such type of repeats are called tandem repeats. Now if I tell human genome, DNA sequencing, some other sentence, again human genomes, means I am telling some other thing in between and then I am telling again human genome. So they are normal repeats. But then when do we use a word called tandem repeat? Human genome, human genome, human genome, human genome, human genome. That is a tandem repeat. So here they are telling that the repeated sequences are tandem repeats. How many times they are repeating? I can't speak 100 to 1000 times, but the DNA 100 to 1000 times it is repeating, it seems. So that they observed that the repeated sequences are repeating. They are repeating 100 to 1000 times. And these repeated sequences, are they coding for anything? No, they are not coding. Like they are not coding. These repeated sequences are not coding. But even though they are not coding, they are required for the chromosomal structure, for the chromosomal dynamics, and for the chromosomal evolution, right? So it might not be required for us, but for the chromosomal stability it is required. So the repeated sequences are 100 to 1000 times repeated and they are non-coding regions, but they are important. But they are important for, what did I tell? Chromosomal stability. It's very much important for chromosomal stability, chromosomal dynamics, and chromosomal evolution. For these points, that is required. Even though it's not coding in terms of protein, it's not required by the cell, but for the chromosome it is required, it seems. Then the next point what they told is, they observed that the first chromosome is the biggest chromosome, having 2968 genes in it. They told chromosome number 1 is the biggest chromosome. Chromosome number 1 is the biggest chromosome with 2398 genes. They told the biggest chromosome, the first chromosome, it has 2968 genes, whereas Y chromosome is the smallest one. Y chromosome is the smallest chromosome with very few genes. How many? 231 genes. This is the other feature they observed. So means the chromosomes are arranged, that's called karyotyping, basing on their size. First is the biggest chromosome, that's why it's on the first order. Y is the last chromosome, smallest chromosome, that's why it comes the last chromosome. It's at the last in the karyotyping. Then scientists observed that there are 1.4 million locations of SNPs. Scientists observed 1.4 million locations of what? SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms. Scientists have observed 1.4 million locations of what is that? Single nucleotide polymorphisms. They identified single nucleotide polymorphisms. Now, what are single nucleotide polymorphisms? I'll take the English words to explain you. Like for example, mnemonics we'll study when we are small. So we'll tell bat, rat, cat. Do you remember your school age? Sat. So 80 is common, but this word BRCAM changed, and it changed the meaning. Like that, in our body also, such one nucleotide only will change, rest all are same. Such type of sequences are called single nucleotide polymorphisms. How many such sequences they saw in our body? 1.4 million locations of single nucleotide polymorphisms are there, which are called as SNPs. They're called as SNPs. Now, what will they help us? Okay, they are there. What will they help us? Now, you'll come to know, okay, it is like this. If bat gets changed to rat, this is the genetic disorder. If rat gets changed to cat, this is the genetic disorder. So means it will help us to trace out the disease genes, and it will help us to trace out the human history. So these single nucleotide polymorphisms will help us to find out, trace out disease causing genes. They'll help us to trace out the disease causing genes, and they will help us to trace out the human evolution also. So children, these are the 9 points of salient features what the scientists have explained after DNA sequencing. Again, if you had to recap quickly, what are the 9 points? The human genome has how many million? They can ask you. It is 3,164.7 million. Billion means 3 billion base pairs. First point. The average size of a gene is 3000, but there's a dystrophin gene which is 2.4 million base pair size. Then the third one, there are only 30,000 genes. Initially they estimated 1,40,000. No, 30,000. In that again, 50% of genes functions are only known. That's the fourth point. Then less than 2% of the genes only will code for proteins. 98% is junk DNA, and that means the 98% repeated sequences are there. They repeated again. What are the repeats called? Tandem repeats they are, right? They are not required for the cell and protein, but they are required for chromosomal structure, chromosomal stability, dynamics and evolution. Then 8th point, first chromosome is the biggest chromosome having 2,968 genes. Y chromosome is the smallest chromosome having 231 genes. Then scientists observed there are 1.4 million locations of one base changes. They're called single nucleotide polymorphisms. For us to understand, I just took the English words bat, cat, rat, mat, sat, like that. Okay, so one alphabet like that, one nucleotide changes. So then by knowing this, what do we come to know? We can find out the disease causing genes. We can trace out the evolutionary history they were telling. All these are the salient features of Human Genome Project. And then coming to the last topic, applications. So you can write on your own. It's decoded. Human genome is decoded. Now it is a task for hundreds and thousands of scientists now to work on this exposed DNA sequence, like how can you improve the race, how can you protect the heart, how can you protect the gene to not get diseased, infected. So all these are the tasks, improvements we can do. Earlier, scientists used to study one gene at a time only. Now computer is there, bioinformatics is there. It can study your entire body genes at a time. Not only your genes, it will compare with the other person's genes, other organisms' genes, other organisms' genes. Children, all this is about the applications of Human Genome Project. Scientists are not fools, unnecessarily they did the sequencing of one person. They know that this is very, very important, which will help us to understand a lot about the human mystery. So even though it's a 13 years task, so many countries, $9 billion also, they did it, and successfully. It helps us a lot in an era of human genomics. Hope you enjoyed the lectures. So if you like the content, like, share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.